assured us that he was going to fix this phone problem and get pagers and stuff like that. I know for a fact, as a man and leader in business and different things like that, that with a phone call I could have fixed that problem. And I've got 5 numbers to call him at, and I know he sees my number come through. He just chose not to take my call. Finally, I did reach him at his office on or about the 4th day, which I'm guessing was February 4th. On February 4th, I rattled his cage more than a little bit. We had a few harsh words, and within a half hour, we had a conference put together with James Timothy, James David, Tommy Schultz, and Kelly Russell, myself. And that is the second recorded call, which is self-authenticating, that we agreed, we got a problem, gentlemen. We need to come together and work this out. And you've listened to that call. The next day, Tim Turner, James Timothy is his real name. He goes by Tim Turner. Tim called me. That would be a Friday, and said, Kelly, I'm just telling you as a friend, I've decided to go with Sam's plan. And, you know, we parted friends, and I just says, okay, Tim, great, good, no problem. And the reason he gave me, the excuse he gave me, was because he purported that the military was in support of what they were doing. I found out a week later that his excuse that he gave me was not true.
Okay, is there anything else that you feel is relevant to the committee's investigation that we need to get on the record at this time?
I believe the intent of the committee is to investigate whether or not we made every effort to unify everybody who's wanting to fix our country. We understood that there were different plans, ideas, thoughts, truths. Some were in error, some had mistaken, and that we acknowledged we could have done a better job, and we were willing to make some changes also. And that was the intent that the committee was to investigate. Did we fulfill our obligation at every turn to come together and make ourselves available to fix and unify these groups? And my testimony is yes, we did, and that's evidenced by the phone calls. The testimony I'm giving is that we did what we were doing, or we made every effort to come together, and the other factions flat out lied to me. There's just no simple way to say it. And they have now lied to the people and to both sides of the camps, and they're spreading all sorts of garbage out there that is not truthful as to why it did not occur. And that is what the committee is investigating.
Okay, thank you very much. It is now 5:48 p.m. and this interview is concluded.
One other thing.
We're back on the record.
Thank you. There are some other private issues that I am addressing, and I'd like the committee, and I've told some of the members about that, pursuant to Matthew 18:15 through Matthew 18:17, and those do need to be handled privately before those issues come forward. And the reason those have to be handled privately is because I trust in the Father, and James Timothy Turner claims to trust in the Father. And so those issues will be dealt with, and once those are dealt with, pursuant to Matthew 18:17, then that final outcome will be brought through the Assembly Church also. Now I'm concluded.
Okay, it is now 5:49 p.m. and the interview is concluded and the witness is dismissed.
That was Kelly Sullivan's testimony. I would draw attention to the fact that Kelly said Turner and Billy were adamant they did not support Sam Kennedy's plan. Turner was dodging phone calls from him, and immediately after that announced he was going with Sam's plan. He shared that the so-called elders had been spreading lies and false claims. Next, we hear James David's testimony.
Issues. And at this time, I would like to get James David under oath of affirmation. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that you will tell the truth under penalty of bearing false witness?
I affirm that I tell the truth and not bear false witness.
Very well. And that is binding upon your conscience?
Yes.
Would you state your name and spell it for the record?
James David, Jamesdai. Boy, there we go on that one. Don't spell that one how much. David.
And would you like to clarify any grammar on that for the purposes of the record?
James David.
Is that capitalized, all uppercase, or all lowercase, or
all
any of that?
lowercase is sufficient.
Okay. At this time, being aware of the subject matter of the investigation, please explain in your own words what occurred, and if I feel there's need for clarification, I will, if it's minor, I'll wait till the end. If it's major, I will interrupt and ask a question.
All right. I'm trying to remember the exact date that we started communicating back and forth on this. I believe it was...
For the purposes of this statement,
September.
on or about is adequate.
On or about September, somewhere in that area of last year. We were discussing, you know, the Republic projects and different projects, and in relation to Tim Turner, I had been on the East Coast, you know, going around truck back and forth to the East Coast all the time. I do a lot of work on the East Coast. And I was trying to get a hold of him and could never get through, or leave messages and do different things. And when we did speak, you know, he would call me back or say he'd take my call anytime, and just never would do it. On several occasions, I told him I was on the Republic of Alabama and that I would be there passing through, and we just couldn't seem to get the communication process. I do know that when on my phone, when somebody calls me, it logs in their phone number and who it is. But anyhow, the point being, that was the rough part of this communication that started. Then we started communicating, and they were talking about this Sam Kennedy, and these other gentlemen were working on a project, and so we were communicating back and forth somewhat on that. At that time, Tim Turner was pretty much kind of working along with us, as you know, he kept talking back and forth with Kelly Russell primarily, and then every once in a while I get to talk to him on the phone, and there at the end we was having disputes about what they called the Free America, what the heck was it, the Free... Well, they call it, TRAP.
The Restore America plan, is that what you're
right. Tim was talking about some of that stuff, and then I read through it and told him that I was not impressed. There was no authority, there was nothing there. Anyway, so he didn't like kind of what I said, and Kelly and I and he and Tom Schultz, Tim Turner, it was just the four of us, got into a phone call conversation, and they was laying out kind of what they were doing, and we kind of got a few heated disputes back and forth, and we really never got to finish it. But what we concluded at the end was we need to sit down and lay out each side so that each side would understand what the other one was looking at. And they agreed to do that, and they would let us know the next day, and pretty much never heard anything again from them. Now, I somewhat remember Tim calling me the next day, but it was short. He was just trying to get me to go over, you know, to follow the trap plan, as I call it. And I just said, absolutely not. I won't work with people that want to work with something that's just trying to take over a government that's not ours anyway. And that's where I'm at with it.
Okay. Was there any invitations or communications relating to media events that were discussed, and who would be on those media events and why, and what would be discussed?
On whose event?
Relating to either agenda or any third agenda that you're aware of.
In ours, we had intended on a media event on the Republic side of the project. We did intend on a media event with the military and the Supreme Court. They had their own purported military event, and it claimed that they had reportedly spoke, and the military was directing them in how to conduct themselves and bring forward their issues. But I never saw any evidence of that.
Was there a specific TV or radio show that was going to happen that there was discussion about, and whether or not certain parties would participate or not?
I have no knowledge of those. I know they exist, but I have never listened to any of it. I wasn't participating in any of it either. I only participated on one phone call, and that was a phone call that, like I said, Kelly Russell, Tim Turner, Tommy Schultz, and myself were on that call, and we agreed to go together, or meet together and resolve conflicts or just separate. I don't have anything else that I recall at this moment.
Thank you very much. It is now 5:36 p.m. and this interview is concluded.
James clearly says all he sees is a plan to create another de facto, worse than the one we already have. And then he shares there's absolutely no evidence that any claims of military support or funding, etc., actually exist. When I listened to the call these gentlemen were testifying about, I heard what they heard and say and more. I heard Tom Schultz declare the Constitution a piece of propaganda.
We use the Constitution also because it's a propaganda tool. My perspective of the Constitution is the recognition of the debts of the 13 states was the original bankruptcy. That's all it was.
And I heard him say the elders were the new sheriff in town and Kelly's group would get on board or be charged with treason. Sound familiar? He also says Kelly and James are starting a civil war. He then admits that they threw in things like mortgages and taxes in the declarations as a sales technique. This is the same threat Turner used when he attempted to coerce a large group in North Carolina into coming on board later. When the question was asked of Turner, so what if we don't want to be involved in what you're doing? The answer was, you'll either get on board or we'll run you over. The next question was, what are you going to do about Sam Kennedy? And the answer from Turner was, we will use Sam Kennedy like a high school Christian whore. Does anything you've heard support any of the outlandish claims of money, military support, funding, imminent danger, Supreme Court input and support, requirement for interim government, or any other that Tim Turner has been shoving down the people's throats all this time? Does it not clearly indicate he was and is lying, and that he infiltrated these groups for the clear purpose of taking them over and seeing to it that it went absolutely nowhere? Well, the interviews I just played resulted in an official report from that Washington Assembly Committee, and I will read from it as to their findings. This committee has performed due diligence. This was written March 31st, 2010. And by the way, to my best of my recollection, that was the date they delivered those declarations to the governors. This committee has performed due diligence and investigated facts and taken testimony pertaining to the published declaration by the self-proclaimed and self-appointed guardian elders, Sam Kennedy, Samuel Thomas Kennedy, a pseudonym, Thomas Bradford Schultz, Regan Dwayne Reedy, and James Timothy Turner, and finds the following. The trap declaration and the unanimous declaration traps one spiritually and politically. There are apparent attempts built into these documents entitled the Restore America Plan, trap, the Restore American Crusade, track, and the unanimous declaration which ensnares one into several unfavorable positions or states of being while excusing the purported elders from any liability for such by use of a pseudonym and failing to define key words. These unfavorable positions or states of being are 1. The loss of one's soul by blood covenant. 2. Deemed a ward of a guardian with implied power of attorney. 3. Subject to maritime admiralty jurisdiction. 4. Operating in a commercial venue as a grand juror. 5. Vacate all lawful authority to others. 6. As holding an unlawful assembly. 7. An enemy combatant. 8. A violator of the Trading with the Enemy Act. 9. A violator of the Patriot Act. Items 1 through 9 above are 14th Amendment benefits protecting U.S. citizens under the military-industrial complex statutory enforcement scheme, of which true sons and daughters of the Republic are not eligible. This political will is the wrong side of the political wall between the Republic and the purported martial law practiced by the municipal corporation.